Uh, I'm Ben. It's great to connect with many of you that I've gotten to work with already, and also some new people I look forward to meeting. I have the privilege of presenting some easier ways to automate actions typically used on the standard data entry screens. These features have a lot of power to help automate your workflows. And although it might be nerdy, it could mean a lot less work. So pay attention. The first feature I'll talk about is I'm going to create a task automatically from the opportunity screen using the new trigger event by action feature. This type of task creation can be automated for any data entry screen. And it's more efficient in the amount of resources needed to process because the system doesn't have to monitor changes made to fields or record changes. You can even trigger another second action using this new feature. I'll then show you how to auto-complete older purchase orders using the new Action as Subscriber feature. What's nice about this feature is that the actions can be completed automatically based on a set of criteria. And this allows your users to focus on their job at hand instead of spending time on mundane tasks required for system maintenance. One last thing to stress before looking at the examples is these features are very powerful in their ability to automate the most commonly used screens. So you'll want to remember that their setup can be restricted only to admin users responsible for setting up that kind of process. The first feature I will show is the trigger business events using an action. On the opportunities screen, I will use the new trigger event by action feature to create a task automatically when I change the opportunity status from new to open. When I refresh the details on the Activities tab, I will see a new task. There we go. A new task was generated and assigned to Maxwell Baker. I'm sorry, here it's Jay Parker. When I click on the task, I can see that information has been populated about the status and stage. The task can, so let's see it. The status, you can see all the information here is auto-populated. This was auto-generated. The task can then be routed through a standard workflow as needed. Let me briefly describe how I set this up. First, using the Tools dropdown, you can click on the business events and you can see associated events in history. If you click on the event ID, and you can see where I created an event called the opportunity task, which I have here already loaded for us. I'm using the new trigger by action type of event and the action open from new, but there are several others that could be used. On the subscribers tab, I created a task template subscriber where I can specify what information to populate on the task that gets created. The second feature I want to talk about is the action as subscriber, which is really the opposite of the feature I just talked about, in that the business event processes first, then the action. I will show you how a business event can automatically complete an older purchase order that no longer needs to be opened. On my purchase order screen, I'll remove hold and approve it. To set the status, as open. Notice that the purchase order has an early date in August. And notice also that the vendor reference field is empty and the summary notes are empty. It would be yellow if there were notes there. I'll wait half a minute or so for the action to process in the background based on the schedule. And while we're waiting on that, I'll give you some brief history. In previous versions, in order to automate actions en masse, you would have to create a generic inquiry and use an import scenario. This was too sophisticated for some users to set up, even though the needed action was very basic and could be accomplished by a single manual click. Now, the new action as subscriber on the business event allows you to automate the same functionality more easily. On this page here is an example. Just a month ago, a user was inquiring the best way to do this. Typically, the user mentions you would go to the More Actions button here and click Complete Order to manually update the PO. There are a couple replies suggesting the standard GI import scenario or using mass actions in the main primary list grid, which are too sophisticated for some users or still require a manual process to achieve. And at the bottom, to my own horn, you'll see my own suggestion to use this new business event feature, which is much easier. So I'll go back to my purchase order and refresh. And we see that it is now in a completed status. And I added some notes here to the vendor reference field and also to these summary notes. Pretty cool, huh? I can also view the history of my business events, again, very easily by clicking on the tools and clicking on business events and going to look at the history. I already have the business event history here. I'll go ahead and refresh. And you can see where the check mark here shows that the business event was successfully processed. So this is good for troubleshooting. A warning will show if my event did not process. And then down in the details, you can see that this did not process because it had an unreleased receipt, which you could then go and discuss with your purchasing department or clear out so that it could complete later automatically. Now, here's a side note on how I set up the event itself briefly. On the event business screen, you set up your business event as normal. Here I use the standard purchase order screen, but you could base your event on any generic inquiry screen. Here's where I set my condition to filter on POs earlier than 90 days. And then here's where the new action comes in, as subscriber comes into play. If I click on that, it will take me to the action execution screen. And here's where you can see as I loaded these notes that populated my vendor ref and note text on the purchase order.